A few years ago, the OACIQ introduced a mandatory form called the brokerage contract to purchase, which is required for anyone who's buying a property who wants to have legal representation from their own real estate broker. So in order to be legally represented, you need to have signed a brokerage contract to purchase. Now, let's say you have a signed brokerage contract to purchase with a buying client, and you write an offer with them and it goes to the notary and it signs. Are you guaranteed to be paid your full commission?
No, you're not.
Really? How come?
Really, because there's an important concept that's known as the effective cause of sale. And in order to prove that you're the effective cause of sale, you have to have been instrumental in the decision that was made by the buyer to purchase the property. And one of the things that is...
No, not one of the things. The most important thing.
Oh, you're right there. The most important thing is being physically present to show the property. And you'd be surprised how many times a buyer visits a property without their broker present.
How does that even happen? How would a buyer who has a contract with you go and visit a property without their agent?
Well, it's happened to all of us. I've had buyers who I've signed a brokerage contract to purchase with. I've shown them properties for weeks or months on end, and then all of a sudden they call me on a Monday morning and say, "Mark, we just visited this house yesterday. It's absolutely gorgeous. We want to write an offer." And I'm like, "What do you mean you visited the house?" And they say, "Well, I know you were skiing with your kids, so I just called the listing broker and we went to see it. I didn't want to bother you." And they literally think they're doing me a favor when in fact they're compromising my claim or entitlement to my commission. So now I'm scrambling to go book a second visit to go back and see it with them, and they are acting like they don't understand. "We've already seen it, Mark. We're ready to make an offer." I'm like, no, you don't understand. If I don't visit the property with you, if I'm not present to establish that I was instrumental in the decision-making process to make the offer, then I risk losing my entitlement to the commission.
So who makes that decision on whether you would get paid or not, or whether you would get paid a portion of your commission? How is that determined?
Well, at the time that a listing broker signs a contract with the seller, they are signing up and agreeing on the commission for both sides of the transaction. So let's say it's 5% total. There'll be 2.5% offered to the buyer's broker and 2.5% that will be retained by the listing broker. And it's the listing broker who, his agency, let's say it's with RE/MAX. At the time of closing, the notary will receive an invoice from RE/MAX, the listing agency, and they'll pay the entire real estate commissions to the RE/MAX agency, who then receive an invoice from the buyer's broker's agency. So let's say I was representing the buyer, it would be an invoice from Royal LePage to the RE/MAX office. Now, if the listing broker, for whatever reason, questions my involvement in the effective cause of sale, he and his agency can make that decision unilaterally that we're not going to pay Mark his commission, or maybe we'll only offer them 50% of what they would have been entitled to had he shown the property.
So can it come as a surprise to the broker sometimes? Like they've gone to the notary, they've done the whole transaction, they weren't present for the visit, but they did everything else. They expect their pay to come and it just doesn't come, and then you start questioning, oh, why haven't I been paid for that transaction yet? Then you reach out to the RE/MAX office and they let you know,
This is why
you weren't there.
Especially for young or inexperienced brokers who are a little naive, yes, they have no idea that this is coming. For those of us who've been in the business for a while, we know better. And as soon as we discover that our client has visited a property without us being present, whether intentionally or not, then we try to make the appropriate steps to get more involved and make sure that we're going back for a second visit and
having a good conversation with the listing broker.
And being completely transparent with the listing broker that I know this happened, but are we still going to be okay here for commission? And sometimes a conversation ensues, and sometimes you have to compromise and you say, well,
you showed it, I'll give you a 25% referral on my side.
You end up having to give up, let's say, 25% of your commission. But at least it's established beforehand and not coming as a surprise when you expect a check and check never comes.
So let's say the check never comes, and then you call the listing broker's agency and they explain, well, no, we're not paying you because you weren't present and you weren't the effective cause of sale.
Yeah.
Does the real estate industry have some type of mediation or arbitration where you can fight your case?
Yeah, as the buyer's broker, if you feel like you do have some claim to your commission, you have
opportunity?
Yeah, the opportunity to go before a conciliation committee. So it's basically the real estate board that will hear both sides of the case, basically from the listing broker side and the buyer broker side, and they'll try to help both parties come to an agreement or a settlement of some kind. If you can't reach an agreement in the conciliation stage, there's a second step called arbitration, which is more costly, more time consuming, and it'll go to, it's almost like a court of appeal.
So I would think, like, if it's an innocent mistake like that, and they just, you've been showing them many houses, you have a good relationship with your buyer, and it's a one-time thing, versus something like the buyer's broker purposely just doesn't show up to visits. They book the appointment, they send their clients, and then they call and say, I'm not going to make it, and say to the listing broker, do you think you could show it for me?
Well, I think this is the reason why these procedures and laws are in place, is to protect proper professional practices and ethical practices. And yes, I have colleagues that work in cottage country, let's say up in Tremblant, and they say this happens all the time, is where a broker from Montreal will book a visit with their client knowing that they have to drive an hour and a half there and back, and 10 or 15 minutes before the visit, that broker calls and says, oh, I'm stuck in traffic, or I had a flat tire, and makes an excuse why they can't be there, and asks her to show the property to their clients for them.
And then in that case, if in arbitration, the listing broker would have a good claim that they are the effective cause of sale, and they're doing somebody else's work for them, versus maybe it just being a mistake.
An unintentional and innocent mistake, like we said.
So the reason we made this video is because a lot of the public is unaware that this is the way our industry works. So we really just wanted to put it out there that if you do have a contract with a hardworking real estate broker who you want to make sure is getting compensation for the work they're doing for you, make sure to always call them for any visit, any information, and not to call the listing broker.
Never visit a property without your broker present. That's it. Thanks for tuning in.